Okochi Gengoro Ikka is a cancelled simulation game from the late 90s made for the Nintendo 64. In the era of the Nintendo 64, there wasn't any information about this game available to the public, with it not being mentioned in magazines and other similar media. However, with the internet becoming a thing, the game became known to the general public on April 12, 2007, when a retro game store in Osaka named Game Tendai Dan showcased a prototype ROM of Okochi on their online blog. The blog showed a few images of the gameplay, as well as an image of the game cartridge itself. Translated into English, the website reads, Nintendo 64's Okochi Gengoro family. ROM cassette was sleeping in our store, so I would like to introduce it this time. It's a cassette under development, so it's big. I don't know the details of this software, but I wonder if it's a basically looking and enjoying system, such as Appletown Story and Game Boy Advance's Millennium Family. It seems that it was software that became the eldest son of the Okochi family. It enjoyed various events that occurred in the family. I tried playing for the time being, because it is under development. It may suddenly freeze, or judgment may be strange. The article then gives a brief outline of the game story. Again, this is translated into English from Google Translate, so some phrasing might not be the best. January 1st. My name is Kakuzo Okochi. He is a 5th grade student at Konugi Elementary School and is 11 years old. He lives in a small house by the river with To-chan, Ka-chan, Ni-chan, Ji-chan, Ba-chan, a baby, and Dan-chan from Shinseki and Izoro. We are very poor. This is because To-chan, a gardener, got into a fight with his boss the other day and got fired from his job. That's why my allowance is only 5 yen every day. He lives in a small house with 8 people, so sometimes he gets into fights. I hate seeing his family fight the most. I always think that I want to live in harmony with everyone, even if it's bimbo. Even if it's bimbo. Wise words. Very wise words indeed. The article then proceeds to detail some of the gameplay. From what I can see, the game revolves around completing mundane daily tasks, such as making curry for your family. However, the game apparently lets you put household items in the curry, such as washing detergent and, the blood of a mouse. It looks like you're meant to avoid these ingredients and make a decent curry, but because the game is a prototype, the game only lets you cook with inedible items. After feeding the curry to your family, your dad collapses onto the floor and starts convulsing. The article writer then writes about how he then had to take his dad to the hospital, and when the dad leaves his hospital bed, he gets a cramp and goes on a rampage, attacking his family. Just an average day in Japan. The article ends with the statement, there is a feeling that it's aiming to be a stupid game from the beginning, but there are many creepy characters and unexpected remarks. I'm very curious about what kind of work it would have been if it had been completed and released properly. The publisher of this game is still unknown, but as for the developer, Hiroshi Ogino, the main programmer of the racing game Gale Racer, released for the Sega Saturn, mentioned that the development team for Okochi Gengoro Ikka is almost identical to that of Gale Racer, and therefore the developer is likely to be this company named System Sacom. However, System Sacom has not listed this game as one of their projects anywhere I can find online. As of today, the game has not surfaced anywhere online to the public. However, the ROM is likely still in possession of the retro game store to this day, as it looks as if the store is still open. If the store is still in possession of this prototype, then there's still some hope that one day we'll be able to experience this masterpiece of a game. But until then, Okochi Gengoro Ikka remains lost. Munkiki's Castle was a mobile game that was developed in 2002, exclusively for the Nokia 3410. The game was able to be played using the Club Nokia service, a long-forgotten distribution portal that was used for downloading custom ringtones and games and stuff. It was basically the App Store, but for Nokia phones in the early 2000s. Munkiki's Castles is thought to be one of the first ever mobile games to make use of 3D graphics. Additionally, It was one of the first mobile games to be released with the Java microenvironment, a platform that was used for developing portable code to be used with mobile devices. Due to the many limitations that the original Java microenvironment had, the developers had to make their own API solely for this game that would work exclusively on the Nokia 3410. With this API, the developers could use rudimentary 3D graphics that were rendered onto a black and white cell phone display. While pretty basic looking today, back in 2002 it was quite impressive that something like this could run on the same device you would use to call your mum. Unfortunately, the Club Nokia service was shut down on the Nokia 3410 immediately following the release of this game, so only a few Nokia phones out there had this game installed. For years, the game was thought to be permanently lost to time. However, on July 10th of 2017, the Lost Media Wiki user, QWERTY36078, was able to get the jar executable of Munkiki's castle, but due to the game being completely reliant on a specific set of Nokia 3410 software, it was determined that there would never be a way to run it in any form. This was because a certain proprietary Nokia 3D class was missing in both the game and the emulator libraries. In fact, it was thought that the handling class was missing on the internet completely. Eventually, a person named Jerome attempted to create his own reproduction of this missing handling class. He was able to successfully emulate the majority of the in-game mechanics. The game itself was not in a playable state due to many other Nokia 3D objects not being emulated. Several people also attempted to run the game on MAME, an open source emulator that supported thousands of architectures, including various old Nokia phones. But on May 29th, 2018, the emulator named FreeJ2Me came in clutch. The emulator released an update that contained all the software that was required in order to emulate the game. And on May 9th, 2023, only yesterday as of writing this script, the 1.06 and the 1.03 versions of the game were found. Now the game can be run all the way to the final level, something that the previous version of the game couldn't do. After a full decade of the internet trying to get the game running in its entirety, this game is now found. Blue Sango was a first-person point-and-click adventure game that was released for Windows and Macintosh back in 1997. A version for the Apple Pippin was also announced, but was eventually cancelled. Goddamn, remember the Apple Pippin? I don't. The game was developed and published by Gyro, a Japanese company that's still around today, making interactive learning materials for schools in Japan. I guess Blue Sango wasn't the hit they thought it would be, so they turned to making teeth-brushing simulators. Blue Sango is a puzzle-based point-and-click adventure game that makes use of Apple's QuickTurn VR technology. This QuickTime VR technology was a thing made by Apple back in 1995. It was primarily used for creating and viewing VR photography, but it was also used in a few games, including Blue Sango. Because of this, it's clear why Apple would want the game to be on their first home console. But unfortunately, the Apple Pippin wasn't very successful. What a surprise. The console had a boomerang controller. Most of the known information on Blue Sango stems from the archives that can be found on the developer's website. At one point in time, the website contained a few images of the game and its development. However, only one screenshot was archived by the Wayback Machine, so these images are now lost. The game was listed on quite a few different software lineups, with its most notable appearance being on Bandai's Pippin title CD-ROM catalog for the summer of 1996, which provides the only known gameplay footage. Also, it appears the game was delayed, as the game catalog lists the game as a summer 1996 release, when it actually was released the following year. Perhaps the Pippin version was going to be released the previous year, with the home computer ports coming in 1997. The internet became aware of the game when on December 13th, 2020, the Twitter user, Gula Sound, posted images of the game's front and back cover, asking other users if they knew anything about it. This same copy of the game was then later sold on the auctioning website Mercari for 490 yen, about $5 American. I guess he didn't know what he had on his hands. The game then surfaced once more for a second time on March 19th, 2023, when a copy of the game was listed on Yahoo Japan auction. The auction ended after 6 days on March 26th, selling for a total of 301,000 yen, about $2,000 USD. Yikes, I bet the Gula Sound fella from before felt a bit silly after that. It was unknown who the game was sold to, as the auction was unfortunately anonymous. And then, out of nowhere, on April 1st of 2023, the Internet Archive user Beanstalk Redump uploaded all of the content of the game online on the Internet Archive. Despite being uploaded on April Fool's Day, the game was there in its entirety, rendering the status of Blue Sango found. Coolsville is a cancelled jazz-themed point-and-click adventure game planned to be released for Windows and to be aimed towards a children audience. It was meant to be released in the fall of 1994, being developed by the company Music Pen and distributed by MediaVision. Coolsville is set in the city of, well, Coolsville, a city that's populated with cartoon animals that are obsessed with jazz music. The city of Coolsville is divided into 4 separate districts, with each having a different name and theme that references jazz music. The city of Coolsville is led by a council of 6 gurus that reunite each year for a public musical performance called The Great Gig. By performing The Great Gig, the city of Coolsville receives enough energy to power the city for a full year. One of the gurus organizing the event has been abducted, and the player sets out on a quest in order to find him, all while picking up musicians to form a band along the way. Several of the characters in the game are obvious parodies of famous jazz musicians and singers. Although it is presumed to be an adventure game, it's also quite likely based off screenshots that it was more of an interactive educational game. This is also backed up by the fact that the developers had also previously created several educational games, most of them being adapted from the Magic School Bus. From what I can find on this French abandonware site, the publishers and distributors of the game, MediaVision, were about to be liquidated close to the release of the game due to a huge scandal over the forging of financial balance sheets. My best guess is that due to the company's oncoming liquidation, MediaVision dropped the project and left the developers to find another publisher by themselves, where the game would end up being cancelled and abandoned. Additionally, according to Trademarkia, the patent on the game kept getting extended. I don't know if that means that there were delays or not, but yeah, that might have done it too. Also, the company Music Pen had another game they were working on at the time named Mind Saver. It was also cancelled and abandoned when the production of Coolsville began. The company Music Pen continued creating music books and a few other obscure educational games, up until 2002 when the company closed down. The only visual signs of its existence that have ever been made public are a few screenshots, as shown in several magazines that were published before the game was cancelled. These screenshots seem to imply that the game may also have had some music creating gameplay, as well as classic point-and-click adventure gameplay. No prototype, demo, or concrete version of the game has ever surfaced to this day. Back during development, the game had previews in French video game magazines, Joystick and Gen 4, which gave very positive feedback, strongly implying that they played at least a prototype. According to the project manager of the game, Michael Duggan, he was under the impression that there was a prototype made sometime after he departed the company. Hopefully, the prototype of the jazz-themed game is discovered one day, and we can witness all of the shenanigans of Coolsville. But until that day, Coolsville remains lost. This one is quite a short one, but is still interesting nonetheless. Dorito's Crash Course 2 was an Xbox Live arcade game that was released for the Xbox 360 on May 8, 2013. The game was a successor to the massively popular Xbox Live game, Dorito's Crash Course. It's a game that expanded upon the ideas of the first game and implemented many more. A big part of this game was the online requirement. Everything that the user did was through the game servers. Whether it was playing a course alone or with others, tracking personal best times, or even just changing your settings. Because of this, when the servers shut down on October 15th, 2014, just over a year after the game's initial release. The game would be deemed unplayable, as connection to the servers is required to even get past the first loading screen. To this day, no one has found a way to access the game's levels and menus. And what makes this harder is the game was delisted from the Microsoft Store on April 24th, 2014. The only way to access this game to any degree is to have a system that it was never deleted from, or to have an account that had purchased the game in the past, in which the game can be re-downloaded from the user's download history in the settings. No versions of the game exist online that allow play of these lost levels. Due to this, the status of Dorito's Crash Course 2 is deemed partially lost. Did you know the Akira movie had a tie-in game? Because I didn't. Akira is a cancelled game that was based on the anime film and manga series of the same name. The game was to be published by THQ and was slated for release sometime in 1994. It was planned to be on multiple consoles, including the Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis, the Sega CD, the Game Boy, and even the Game Gear. Both videos and screenshots of the game have circulated on the internet throughout the years. However, ROMs and physical copies from most versions of the game have not yet surfaced. A ROM file for the Sega Genesis version was eventually found in December of 2019, but the versions for the other 4 consoles still remain missing. In an interview with developer Jim Gregory, he shares some details in regards to his experience while working on the Super Nintendo version of Akira. According to Gregory, the original developer of the game, Black Pearl, had transferred the rights for the game during development to THQ. Apparently, THQ made demands of the project that were not possible due to the many technical limitations of the consoles. Eventually, the lead programmer for the game left the project, which would further compromise the project's development. All of these factors combined would play quite a large role in the video game's cancellation. Gregory stated in an interview with Hardcore Gaming 101 that a physical copy of Akira for the Super Nintendo was never produced. The only playable builds were sent via modem to THQ. Despite this, THQ does not have a copy of the game in its archive. THQ Mastering Lab technician Ryan Arnold hypothesized that the master copy is currently in possession of Akira's license holder. Tom Meggs of Black Pearl confirmed that the company was also working on a Game Gear version of Akira. The progress of the game was destroyed when a programmer left the project. However, approximately only about 30% of the game was completed. Also, just a side note, a 1994 VHS release of the movie included a mail-in rebate offer for $5 with the purchase of both the movie and the video game. Pretty cool. Despite THQ's version of the game being cancelled, another attempt at making a video game based on Akira was released for the Commodore and the Amiga CD32 in 1994. Developed in the UK by ICE Software and released only in Europe, it was critically panned and regarded by many as one of the worst games ever released for both platforms. Suddenly, out of nowhere, in December 2013, gameplay footage was discovered in a video of the 1994 Consumer Electronics Show, uploaded by the YouTube user Pook Ninja 3. The footage appeared to be taken from the Sega Genesis version of the game. 3 years later, on April 27, 2016, the game's intro and more gameplay footage were discovered in another video of the 1994 Consumer Electronics Show, uploaded by the YouTube user PS Nation. On August 24, 2016, 4 prototypes of the Game Boy version, along with the unreleased Sega Genesis version, was found by Patrick Scott Patterson, also known as Original PSP, and was posted on Twitter the following day. On December 12, 2016, Patrick Scott Patterson uploaded the gameplay footage of the 4th prototype build of the Game Boy version. The ROM included the first stage with intros and the final stage with the fetus monster form of Tetsuo. The 8-bit rendition of the film soundtrack was not implemented yet in the build. Instead, a piece of jolly mismatching music taken from the Game Boy port of Jack Nicklaus Golf was used as a placeholder. On December 25th, 2019, Hidden Palace revealed that a cartridge of the Sega Genesis version of Akira was found. Courtesy of user Matsuda, an anonymous donor. They then dumped the ROM online, which was played during a Twitch stream on the same day. In the same blog post, they also shared sprites of an early build of the yet undiscovered Super Nintendo version, provided by former members of Handmade Software, the studio that worked on that version until its cancellation. Approximately 65% of the game's data can be accessed within the game itself, and the remaining 35% consists of unused assets. Overall, the Sega Genesis version of Akira has been deemed found, while the other 4 versions of the game still remain lost. Crash Bandicoot and Spyro Adventure World was a collection of online browser-based minigames on the long-gone website candystand.com that was launched in 2004 and was later ended in 2005, only lasting 1 year. It was created as a cross-promotion with the food company Nabisco and Game Boy Advance games Crash Bandicoot Purple and Spyro Orange. The online minigames that could be played on CandySand.com were unlocked by the use of codes that could be found on cards from specially marked packets of Nabisco snack products. In March of 2016, the website Candy Stand was rebranded as PCH Games and is currently inactive. Due to this, as well as the fact that the promotional cards stopped being distributed in 2005. These games are no longer accessible and are lost to time. No archives of the minigames exist on the internet, and each of the 7 minigames are no longer accessible. The 7 games that were lost were Crash's Nitro Kart Rally, Crash's Rocket Mania, Smack a Dingo, Raygun Alley, Spyro's Flying Adventure, Blinky's Cavernous Crisis, and Hunter's Target Range. Not only are a total of 7 games lost forever, but most of the designs of the cards that contain the codes are a complete mystery, with only 22 of the 90 plus cards being recorded online. The exact number of cards is also unknown, as promotional material never gave a definitive number, only stating that there were over 90. This is quite a shame, as the cards contain some pretty cool looking 3D renders, with some of them even being original. Until we hear anything from PCH Games, Nabisco, or the developers of the games, it's safe to say that Crash Bandicoot and Spyro Adventure World will remain lost. LEGO Sea Challenge, also called Beneath the Lego Fantasy, was a planned spin-off game in the LEGO Island series that would have been developed and published by Mindscape. The game would have also taken place in the ocean, and possibly could have been based on the LEGO Aquazone or LEGO Divers themes. If you aren't too sure on your LEGO Island history, I'll give you a bit of background. In the year 1996, the LEGO Group invested $2 million into developing LEGO-themed video games. This was done in part to help expand the LEGO brand beyond LEGO sets and into other mediums of entertainment. If it wasn't for this effort, we never would have gotten to play LEGO Batman. On September 26, 1997, the first ever LEGO game, titled LEGO Island, was released. The game was met with great success, and before the release of LEGO Island, 6 more games were already in the planning stages. LEGO Sea Challenge is the most notable out of the 6 games, as there's an Easter egg in LEGO Island that shows a teaser for the game. In an interview with a LEGO Island fan site, the director Wes Jenkins says that, yes, the second floor was a homage. We thought that it was funny that the ocean was on the second floor, referring to the second floor of the elevator in the game, where the Easter egg can be spotted. According to Scott Anderson, the senior producer of LEGO Island, the game was initially going to feature submarines and divers, trying to stop a Brickster-type character from upsetting 5 to 7 different underwater ecologies. The game was originally going to be mentioned in LEGO Island's manual as part of a contest, but both the mention and the contest were scrapped. Also in that same interview with the LEGO Island fan site, Wes Jenkins also talks about why LEGO Sea Challenge was cancelled, stating, well, time, budget, technology, and other, but mostly because Mindscape got into a dispute with LEGO over distribution and lost their contract. Political issues mostly. They didn't realize the potential profits of the product and what LEGO was about. In fact, they couldn't quite understand why we didn't just do a simple 2D program instead of 3D. Is that libelous? No. I didn't mention any names. Maybe I should just say some people from unknown places seemed less than enthusiastic and were paranoid every step of the way. Mindscape also fired the entire team that had worked on LEGO Island a day before the release, prompting any spin-offs to be shelved. No other gameplay footage or teasers are known to exist outside of what was shown on LEGO Island, and to this day, LEGO Sea Challenge remains lost. I'm sorry, I just had to talk about this one. If I'm going to continue with this series, I need to get this game out of the way. Family Guy Online was an online MMORPG that ran from 2012 to 2013. The game was based on the long-running animated sitcom of the same name. In Family Guy Online, the player would customize their own character and take on missions that were given to them by other Family Guy characters in the city of Cowhog. However, due to the fact that Fox was making almost no money from it, the servers were shut down only 1 year after its release. Unlike many other online MMOs, there are no mirrors for this game available, so it's impossible to play. While the game itself is lost, there are still many gameplay videos on Family Guy Online. On June 12, 2020, a Lost Media Wiki Discord user by the name Smoke uploaded a few cached assets from the game, dated to be from August of 2012. 2 years later, on September 5th, 2022, another Discord user named Golden Child found that the user named Dava had uploaded a grand total of 2,621 files from the game to Blueplode via the Flashpoint Web Cache Recovery Index. It contained 1,310 folders of assets and cached metadata files for the game. It's honestly super surprising to me that with how big of a franchise Family Guy is, this game would be lost. However, I don't think a company as big as Fox cares that much about video game preservation. Until Fox themselves make a mirror of the game, which is highly unlikely, Family Guy will remain lost. .3D Groove was a 3D game engine from back in the day that was active in the years between 1998 and 2009, with its peak use occurring in the early to mid 2000s. The majority of games that were created using 3D Groove were lost when 3D Groove eventually shut down in 2009. The 3D Groove game engine was developed by the company The Groove Alliance. While this company did create a few of their own original games using the engine, their main focus was to develop games to advertise different toys, movies, and cartoons using the engine. 3D Groove's advert games, meaning advertisement games, would be developed at the request of a company for one of its brands, such as Radio Shack, AT&T, Intel, Pringles, and much more. These games were able to be played online with the use of a web browser plugin, but more often than not, there was a more fully featured version of the game that could be purchased and played offline. The games were licensed royalty-free and non-exclusively, and the game would need to be removed after the license expired. In early 2009, 3D Groove's site shut down, causing a lot of their games to be lost. The Groove Alliance rebranded as Otoy, which is still around today, but has moved in a different direction, instead focusing on their Octane renderer engine, used to create photorealistic graphics from within 3D modeling tools such as Maya. No 3D Groove games are currently available for purchase. However, several are still available to play thanks to various means such as archive.org or people uploading a game that was on their computer. Overall, with the shutdown of 3D Groove, a total of 13 games are still lost, but due to several years of recovery efforts, the other 76 games created with 3D Groove have been found. when both Universal Studio Parks in Hollywood and Orlando got to work on a 4D simulator attraction based on the hit animated series The Simpsons. An online promotional game was made to promote the ride at least 2 months before the ride officially opened, only to shut down out of nowhere. The Simpsons ride is a motion simulator attraction that opened in Universal Studios Florida and Universal Studios Hollywood in May 2008, 4 days apart from each other. The attraction's storyline revolves around a theme park that recently opened in Springfield named Krustyland, built by and named after Krusty the Clown, who picks the Simpsons to test out his latest thrill ride. Though, unfortunately for them, Sideshow Bob escapes from prison and sets out to kill the family as he pursues them throughout various rides. The producers of The Simpsons worked very closely with the ride designers as the show's traditional 2D animation was used for the pre-show and other bonus clips found throughout the queue, while the ride footage was done in CGI by both Blur Studio and Real FX. Much of the show's original cast members returned to voice their own characters, with the only notable exception being Harry Shearer, who couldn't sign on due to scheduling conflicts. The ride was first announced in April of 2007, and construction on both versions commenced as the year led on. Though on March 28, 2008, an official website was made to promote the ride, designed by 65 Media, who had previously worked on a website for the Simpsons movie, with much of the site design, layout, and flash animation done by Priscilla Gomez. The main menu resembled the Golden Archway entrance to the Universal Studio Parks, with the iconic rotating globe in the left foreground, and Krustyland in the back, hidden by a tarp during construction, and was fully unveiled upon opening. Many of the Simpsons characters that could be seen before the opening were Sideshow Bob, standing next to the catapult, Groundskeeper Willie, blocking off the taped-off entrance, and Ned Flanders with Rod and Todd, who did not appear in the final ride due to Shearer's absence. Upon opening, the menu now consisted of the squeaky-voiced teen in a ride photo booth, Sideshow Mel next to a camera, and the Simpsons, crashing their car into the Universal Globe. To the right of the gate was an LED billboard that would sometimes show a Buzz Cola advertisement, or the animated commercial that was made to promote the attraction. The main focal point of the Simpsons ride website was a mini-game titled Catapult To Krustyland. It worked like most online slingshot games, where a wooden catapult stands on a green hill. If fired with the right timing and wind direction, will send them beyond the gates of Universal Studios theme parks. There would also be hazards in the way, including a swinging wrecking ball that can throw your characters off guard when thrown at the wrong time. The characters you play as in the game are actually Simpson avatars that you can make by creating an account, and was a repurposed feature from the Simpsons movie website that 65 Media made a year prior. Though players also had the opportunity to fling caricatures of notable figures like the former Tonight Show host Conan O'Brien and Jay Leno, Republican electoral candidate John McCain, Democrat electoral candidate Hillary Clinton, and future President Barack Obama. However, the political figures were not referred to by their real names, but rather nicknames, with Clinton being dubbed Senator Pantsuit, McCain being dubbed Senator Whitehair, and Obama being dubbed Senator Talkgood. Catapult to Krustyland also had a leaderboard system, where players could check their high scores and see which one peaks at the top overall. On April 1st, 2008, Universal announced a contest that ran through May 31st, where fans could create their own avatars, with the winners receiving Simpsons sweepstakes, including a grand prize trip for 4 to either Orlando or Hollywood, plus their OCs being on display at both locations, though it's unknown who the winners were, or if their OCs ever made it into parts of the ride. As for the other features of the Simpsons ride website, once the ride officially opened, there was a banner hanging from the Universal archway that read "Grand Opening, click to enter," with a giant gaping maw of Krusty underneath. This presumably took you to another page that featured the exterior of the Simpsons ride, placed between the park's recreation of Hollywood Boulevard, despite being built in what was once part of the World Expo before Springfield was built in 2013. It also contained carnival game tents on both sides. This may have been the sub-menu for additional games, as there have been 2 recovered screen grabs of title cards from games that came from the Simpsons Ride website. The 2 games include the Screamatorium of Dr. Frightmare, based on the ride of the same name that is shown in the Season 9 episode, Bart Carney, and the second is Madame Manjula's Future Looker After, featuring the wife of Apu, both based on advertisements for Krustyland attractions found throughout the queue. No gameplay or screenshots can be found, though by looking closely at the title screens, we can safely assume that the Screamatorium was a break the targets type game, while the Future Looker After was part of the memory card genre. On the bottom right corner, there is a sign that says, "Enjoy exclusive content by completing all the Midway games," meaning there are at least several other carnival games to do, but have not been documented. Other menus that could be found on the website include links to order the Simpsons movie on DVD, email updates regarding the attraction, and unspecified download sweepstakes. The Simpsons Ride website and its online games would remain active a year after the attraction first opened, though in 2010, Universal decided to retire the site permanently, as the link would now be redirected to the error page of the Universal Studios Orlando website. But nowadays, the link redirects you to Disney's homepage. Both ROMs for Catapult to Krustyland and the Carnival games were never copied onto any other website, with no gameplay footage being made available. Only select screenshots and articles remain as proof of their existence. Any capture of the Simpsons Ride website from 2008 to 2009 only shows a blank white page with text disclaiming the ride's plot summary and potential release date, as the ride was made using Adobe Flash 9 and JavaScript, which was incompatible with the Wayback Machine, even before the software was terminated in 2020. While the Simpsons Ride may have gone on to become an enduring hit for both Universal Studio resorts in Florida and California, the website that promoted it will, unfortunately, forever remain lost.